In today's show, we discuss, do oppressed people automatically deserve our protection?
And now, the TNT Talk Show, daring to go where other podcasts fear to tread.
Hello, I'm Tony Fasulo, and I share the stage with my esteemed friend and colleague, Tayo Boya. Tayo, hello, my friend, once again. I hope you're keeping safe and well.
Yeah, what the hell, Tony? What you gonna do, eh?
I mean, you've broken the habit of being on mute. That makes
I thought I'd better. Hoping that you wouldn't bring it up, but guess what? You still brought it up, so not much progress. See what I mean about what's the point?
For the benefit of our listeners and perhaps new watchers out there, my esteemed friend and colleague of late, the last 3 episodes in a row, has forgot to unmute his microphone just before I ask him a question. So he's got around that. Yay, let's be positive. Hooray. In that case, can we say hi to our audience?
Positively. Positive. Hello, audience.
Yay! It's still good. Oh dear. Anyway, on with today's topic. And today we're discussing, do oppressed people automatically deserve our protection? Now, Taya, you came up with this subject. Do you want to elaborate what brought this to your attention or why we want to discuss it?
Well, brought up in the good old British tradition of supporting the underdog. For a very long time, I always thought that I was such a person, that I support underdogs by and large, and I felt virtuous for doing so. But I came across an argument where someone said, actually, underdogs may not automatically be the right people to support. And my instinct was straight away, that's nonsensical. Underdogs, oppressed people, they're oppressed. If someone is bullying them, and we always take the side of the weak against those who are being bullied. But the person evinced certain arguments, and my position is, if someone is right, they're right. And I just felt, you know what? All this time I just assumed that just because somebody was, so to speak, a victim, that person was deserving of protection. But now that I've been exposed to counter arguments, I feel, well, actually, no, not all victims are blameless and therefore are deserving of protection.
Before we move on with the discussion, is it worthwhile actually defining what oppression actually is? Because it could be misinterpreted as to what oppression is. Because if we use the term as we believe it means, where someone is unfairly prevented from doing, being, acting the way that they choose, then we sort of, as human beings, I suppose, we get a little bit of our backs up because we don't want to be prevented from doing the things we want to do. We got free will. We want to be able to express that free will. So the word oppressed automatically brings that closing in of those aspects of our being, and we're prevented from doing them. But you could use, if you use the term oppressed in a positive way.
How do you use it? How do you use the word oppressed?
You could, if we don't define the word properly. For instance, let's say you are oppressing somebody from leaving a mental hospital. There's an inherent benefit behind the scenes there for
That's just bad
them.
English.
No, I know. I agree. That's why I
You're
want to.
preventing someone
Yes,
from leaving the
preventing.
medal. You're
But
not
you're oppressing
oppressing.
their free. You're oppressing their freedom. You're oppressing their right to leave. So you could,
You're
in
suppressing
a
their
loop,
life. They're
suppressing,
suppressing.
oppressing. But it's
Is
a
it,
similar element, aren't you? You're suppressing. Therefore,
well,
you're
left is similar
oppressing.
to right, but it's exactly not the same thing. If you turn left.
Hence why I want you, if you wouldn't mind, to define the context of the word being oppressed in terms of our subject.
I think I want to, because I think you've already defined it fantastically. That was a fantastic definition of the word oppressed, to prevent someone unfairly prevent someone from doing what he feels like doing, like he's living his life his own way. I think
But
that's
what? Let's put it on it, turn it on its head. Let's say I want to put my hand in the fire, and you are oppressing me because you're forcibly stopping me from doing that. Is that being oppressed?
okay. First of all, you're asking that question to the wrong person, because you know very well that if I'm standing there and you put your hand in fire, I'm going to let you, because, you know, it's your right to. And I don't really give a rat's ass anyway. That's how you feel about it. Go ahead, pal. Not my hand. So, whatevs. That, you need someone who's got this sort of milk of human thingy, that whatever the talk of,
Milk
milk
of
of human
human kindness. Yeah.
kindness flowing in there. I don't give it. I don't give it. Now,
Okay.
if I see somebody putting someone else's hand into the fire, well, that someone else is oppressed. You're putting someone else's hand into the fire. I'm not going to accept that. That's going to be a big palaver between myself and the oppressor.
Okay. So I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here. So do you therefore, I don't know what your side of the fence is here. Do you then take on board some governments who oppress their populations in some way in order their justification to protect those people, because those people are not very good at making those decisions themselves?
Well, yes and no. I got this rule. I think I've discussed it several times. My rule is we should not intervene in the internal affairs of any nation. So I might not like it. There are certain countries that treat their citizens in a way that I don't like, but I'd never pretend that I am the overlord of the planet, and I can speak for the citizens of that country. By the way, I don't like the way my government is treating me. So
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to deal with that. Never mind someone else's country. I'm not even satisfied that I've got true democracy in my country. So I can't run around the world telling other people how to run their
So,
affairs.
so therein goes back to what I was saying about defining oppression, because one person may believe a demographic or group could be oppressed,
Mm.
but someone else's point of view saying, well, no, they're being looked after. So that's wherein the definition of oppressed has to be clear, and whether the term is, if someone is being oppressed, they've got to meet the criteria of what oppression actually means. Otherwise, they're not being oppressed, they're being coerced, suppressed a little bit, but oppressed is where they can't do anything about it at all. Because, okay, let me ask you a question. If someone is prevented from doing something but only a short period, let's go back to the COVID years. We were suppressed. We weren't allowed to leave our houses, but it was for only a set period of time. So we as a population, and various countries around the world obviously did the same, were we oppressed, or were we just suppressed during that period?
Well, I have in my hand my trusty Oxford Dictionary of English.
Okay.
It says oppression is prolonged, cruel, or unjust treatment or exercise of authority. So,
Prolonged, what does that mean in real
well,
terms?
well, anything that is by our judgment, which would be subjective, can't be objective here. Our
No.
subjective judgment, a prolonged, not short, not brief. I mean, being held in an airport for a couple of hours as compared to being thrown in prison for a couple of months, I think we can say that in one case we completely understand which one is prolonged as compared to the other.
Doesn't
However,
it
even if
define,
it's
but doesn't it define on what the oppression entails?
no, just restriction of your freedom. So if you just held in an airport for 2 hours, and or compared to being held in prison for 2 hours and prevented from going around about your lawful business, it's one is prolonged and the other wasn't that prolonged. But 2 hours is still a longish amount of time to be held back, especially if you miss your train and it costs you money, etc., etc. So I think it's quite ambiguous what it means. It's a bit subjective as to what that means. We could drop maybe the prolonged there. Just how did it say? Just the cruel. Hang on, let me see again. It says the cruel or unjust treatment or exercise of authority. I think so. I'd like to not use bring prolonged into it. Cruel or unjust treatment or exercise of authority. And I like the idea that I like the inclusion of cruelty and unjust treatment. I think that's the thing. When we see someone being oppressed, we go, that's not fair. I think you said it in your original definition too. I think you brought in that idea of this is someone is being unfairly treated. I think that's it. So if we see someone being in countries that have penal punishment, that have corporal punishment, if we see someone being flogged, I mean, well, what did that person do? And it turns out that the person did something unpleasant to a small child, and means sexually unpleasant to a small child, and he's got 5 or 6 lashes of the cane. He or she's got five. We go, well, it's brutal, but we don't see that as being unfair. It's the law of the land, and the person was caught and went to court, and all the due process and everything. We don't think there's anything hanky panky. We think, well, that person really was guilty. This is the punishment. The punishment doesn't seem excessive. 5 or 6 lashes of the cane. Well, all right, it's a bit unfortunate, but okay. And then there's no feeling of oppression as compared to, well, why is that person being caned? And I said, well, because they were singing. They were singing. What's the matter with singing? Well, they were singing a Christian song. Well, okay, I don't see why that should lead to. So from that point of view, straight away we go, no, this is unfair, and that's what brings in the sense of injustice and cruelty
So,
and
so,
oppression.
but is oppression valid? Someone can say a group are being oppressed if the law of the country that they're in forbids that particular function, act, whatever it is, and a small demographic therefore are unable to express whatever it is they've been forbidden to be expressed by the law of the land. So is that oppression?
Well, this is where it all gets very interesting. Yes, I believe it is oppression, but I'm going to say that some forms of oppression are okay with me. Because, frankly, the people who are being oppressed, I don't particularly like.
So from your point of view, so be it.
So be it. Have at it. Tyre
Oh,
cares less. In fact, If I could get away with it.
Okay, let's go back to the actual topic of today then. The Are oppressed people, do they deserve our protection or not? So you were
No,
saying
no, they
no.
don't. Not in all
Okay.
cases. I used to think they did until I was made to understand by someone's very good argument that not all victims are equal.
Go on.
And
Could you elaborate?
yes, in our history of Western civilization, we have indubitably oppressed certain people. I mean, no ifs, no whens, no
Yeah, we have
questions.
for sure.
We've maltreated the Aborigines of Australia, the Native Americans, Amerindians, as they're called nowadays. Oh, I don't know if they are called that nowadays. The populations of Africa, just really, really badly treated. And as we have gradually come to terms with the way we maltreated people, it seems to me as if other people have jumped on the bandwagon and have begun to mark themselves out and carve out for themselves statements of victimhood.
That's a good word.
They see other people being treated in a certain way, or not even treated, they just see other people getting attention and the sympathy of the general population for what has happened to them historically, and they want some of that. They want some of that attention and sympathy and empathy, they define themselves. I mean, into states of victimhood, but amplified to a degree that has become to me a problem to our society. And if we're not careful, I think it's even too late. But I was going to say, if we're not careful, we'll turn upon its head and redouble the oppression because people are going to be, look, man, we've had enough of this. And instead of going back to a middle, you always, okay, let me finish speaking, finish my thought. Instead of going back to a nice balanced place, the pendulum will swing too far to the other side, which you often mention this thing about the
Yeah.
pendulum swinging.
Yeah.
And you see, when I say I've got these people I don't like, I still don't want the pendulum to swing too far back the other way because I marched for them in the 70s. I marched. I said, look, we are oppressing these people. What people do in the privacy of what adults do in private is really not our business.
Mm-hmm.
But it has become these people have made it our business now.
Okay.
It used to be not to be our business, and then we fought. We marched for it. We fought for it. We got it. People stopped asking, "What are you doing in private?" It's none of your blooming business.
Yeah.
Now it's our business. Now it made it our business, and some people have want to go all the way back to, well, actually, we should be locking these people up. In fact, some people want to go further. They say, well, you know what? Iran has got a good idea of pushing them off from a high place. This is the problem.
Yeah.
You're looking for a balance, but when victimhood becomes a kind of grift, I think we can sense it, and I think we've gotten to the point now where we can say, well, actually, are these people really, really victims? I mean, who is a victim here? Let's take a case that I'm sure will cause you and I to disagree, which would be a good thing for our show. Let's say the case of Israel. The
Mm-hmm.
Israelis always talk about the Holocaust. And for a long time, I didn't even question it, the Holocaust, the Holocaust, the Holocaust, 6 million Jews, 6 million Jews. Well, the first thing I found out about the 6 million Jews was that actually 17.2 million people were killed in the concentration camps. 17.2 million.
As much
And
as that, I thought it was around 11. I don't know that figure, but okay. 17 seems
11
rather high.
plus 11 plus 6.
Oh, I see. Right. Yes. 11 non-Jewish people. 11
Yes.
million. Yes, I see. Yes, of course.
Yeah, 17 million were killed but you never hear like, okay, you've actually stated it. You never hear about the other 11 million people. They suffered too. What?
I think, wasn't it true that the Jewish camp was one demographic, which was the biggest. The rest,
It was. Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
11 million were all variations, wasn't it? It wasn't.
Yeah, but if you're a Roma, God knows how many Roma were killed. It was quite a lot of them
Yeah.
who
But
were.
I think part of the problem in in the Second World War was that the the Jewish people was singled out by the Nazis directly as a problem. Hence why they persecuted them and
So
wanted
were
to.
the Roma.
Yeah, but they weren't in the same context as Jewish
Well,
people.
what actually happens that the Roma don't have access, the same kind of access to mass media as the Jewish people do. Let's be honest, the Jewish people have got the control, I suppose you could say, Western media, especially in America, not so
What,
much in
today, you
Europe.
mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Today, yeah.
Hollywood is
Well, okay.
so. I mean, so the point is they've sold and sold and sold the Holocaust, the victimhood to the point where a lot of people are not even aware that anybody else died in the concentration camps. To that point, and then they've used that to where they are now doing what they're doing in Gaza in Palestine. And you go, well, hang on a second. If you were making so much fuss about the Holocaust, and if you know what oppression is, why are you doing this?
I think we've got to separate. Let's for the sake of the discussion here, we must separate the Israeli government from the Israeli people here, because there are a lot now of Israeli people who are against their government for doing the acts that they're doing in Gaza. So we must make that
That's not
distinction.
actually true.
No, that
That's not
is
actually,
true.
there are a lot of Jews who are against it, yes, but not a lot of Israelis. Actually, the latest poll I've seen is that about 70% of Israelis support what is happening. So 70% is the vast majority. So
Okay. It
yeah, a lot
depends on
of
where we got that
Jews,
figure from. I got a different
a lot
figure.
of Jews. I will go with you. A lot of Jews in Britain and America, all over the world, who have, and some of them, astonishingly, have been called anti-Semitic. So that you're
Yes,
like,
I know,
hang
which
on a
is
second,
that doesn't make sense. That
that
doesn't
doesn't
make
make
sense. Yeah,
that
it
doesn't
doesn't
make
make sense.
a great deal of sense.
Indeed.
So no, I don't agree with you. But let's not even get into all these.
No, no. But let's go back to
The main thing
this.
I'm talking about is when you're talking about oppression and people you grifting off oppression, it does get to the point where other people, like I'm saying now, we start asking ourselves questions. Hold on. And then that grift fails and the oppression also fails because now I'm not prepared to accept the 6 million Jews narrative anymore. I'm like, yeah, you're not the only ones who died, okay? If you want to ask Native Americans how many of them were killed, I mean, entire tribes were wiped off the map. We don't see them anymore. There's all over the world, I don't know how many Uyghurs have died. That countless millions have been. So you and your 6 million, you've overplayed your hand with that. I think that's what happens with when people really push the status of being a victim. They can go to the point where it loses its currency, and it's no longer worthy of protection,
Well,
especially when it's being used to harm other people.
indeed.
So,
Well, one element about oppression is the vulnerability angle, because oppressed groups often lack the power to defend themselves.
yeah,
So if they can defend themselves, you then have to question, are you oppressed? No. If they're choosing to not defend themselves, that's a choice. That doesn't still make them oppressed,
mm.
because they could change the narrative. So as part of the term oppressed, there's normally a vulnerability in amongst that they cannot or in any way defend themselves. So then you would say they're being oppressed by a stronger element. But if they can defend themselves, then you're right. They can't then say, oh, we're being oppressed. Well, actually, you can do something about it. And if you can do something about it, why aren't you? So, and if they are, then they're no longer oppressed. Did you see what I'm saying? So it then unwinds, and they cannot then use the term oppressed. So is this what your whole point of the topic is about whether
Oh, but I know,
oppressed
no, I haven't
people...
even started.
Oh, okay.
You see, women.
Oh boy. Okay. Is this going to be an adult show now? We're going to have to mark it. Are you going to say things that some people are going to get really offended with?
Well, that's their problem. I mean, I'm just gonna say the way I see it. I'm not going to use bad language or anything.
Okay.
Women. West women. I think when I say women, I really mean Western women.
Okay.
They drive you crazy. They drive me crazy.
Okay.
There's this thing that we speak about in the manosphere, and we point to it all the time, and we say, what's all this? Women claim in the West that they are strong, empowered, independent. These things I keep throwing around, and they don't need no man. This expression, women don't need no man. And then at the same time, they say they're oppressed by the patriarchy. It's like, hold on a second. If you're strong, independent, and you don't need no man and this and that, and you're independent, you're tough, how is it that the patriarchy is able to oppress you? It doesn't make any sense. The case in point, victimhood. I claim to be a victim. I can't remember her name. I'll look it up in a second. I should have done ahead of time. I can't remember her name, but she plays Rapaho, I think her name is Rapaho. She plays
football
football
yeah,
for
for the
United
American
States.
football. She just retired from playing football after a long career.
Well, if she could play football in the first place, then she could have retired from it. But I dismiss all that nonsense.
That's okay.
Yeah. See, I'm not a victim at all. So she was doing the rounds and going around saying that women are being oppressed, that they don't get equal share of the money and this and that, that the men kind of get the men's soccer team and so on and so forth. What they call it soccer in America, because we say football, don't we? And they don't get that kind of money, and therefore they deserve half of what, the same amount as men do. It's just like, it's so, whoa, this playing victim here doesn't work for me, okay? You're not bringing in the same amount of income as are the men. If you are bringing in the same amount of income as the men's side, and you weren't getting paid the same, I would be on your side. I would be one of the first saying, well, hold on, what's going on? In fact, if you were bringing in more money than the men did, and you were still getting the same money, I'd ask, why are the men getting the same money? They're not. I'd
bringing
ask
in
that
as much
question.
income.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
I would actually
indeed.
say that's not fair.
It's a commercial thing. It's nothing to do with the equality in that sense. It's a commercial entity. So,
and what freaks me out is this: if you really feel that, why don't you go off and start your own plumbing league? Go and start your own league, and then pay yourselves whatever you like. Why must you actually be with the same league as the men? I don't get it. Same with women's golf, women's tennis. Women's tennis, they've never played 5 matches in the Grand Slams. Grand Slams are
5 sets per
5 matches. Sorry, 5 sets.
5 sets, yeah.
Thank you. They never play 5 sets, and yet they get paid the same for playing 3 sets. And I'm like, yeah. So actually, if I had been a tennis player, I would definitely have been in court over that. I'd have been in court over that, because that's, again, who's being oppressed here? So maybe, when I talk to you sometimes, some of these shows, I actually reach a new revelation, if you like, a moment of inspiration. I go, oh, hang on. Maybe I am on the side of the oppressed. It's just that the person who is saying that they're oppressed isn't the one that I see as being oppressed.
Yeah.
I've just maybe just realized, well, maybe I'm still a good person in my own way, in that, yeah, I still side with the oppressed, but the people who claim to be oppressed
And not
are the
oppressed.
oppressors.
Yeah, they're
The
not
hypocrites.
actually oppressed. Yeah,
They're
no,
not
you're
actually.
absolutely spot on there. I mean, that there's an element of hypocrisy there,
Hmm.
where they're claiming oppression when you look beneath the surface, they're not. And for a commercial example that you've given there about the football, the income that the players receive, be they male or female, is based on the people coming through the turnstiles, watching on TV. So this argument of they should be paid the same, no, if she'd have made an argument they should be paid fairly in proportion to the audiences that bring in, that's a different argument.
Would
No
you want
one's
to know why
bemoaning
they're
that.
not being paid
Yeah,
that, actually?
exactly.
To be like,
That's absolutely
oh,
right. But to then compare to a different group, this is the men's, it's like a different sport effectively. If they're bringing in so many more people watching the sport, paying people, then obviously they're going to generate more. And you shouldn't be getting more money by the sake of that example alone. I mean, okay, let's use this example in the English Football League. Okay. Now, English football is quite popular around the world. We have the Premier League, which is the first tier, and that brings in the bulk of the money. But they don't only have this one Premier League. They have several tiered leagues further down. So by virtue of equinity or equality,
equality,
does
yeah.
that mean the people further down should get the same as the elite players at the top?
Obviously
No,
not.
because those men who are in those leagues know that they're not bringing in the audiences that the first Premier League are, because they're not as good yet. They could be if they practice hard, but some naturally are not going to be as good.
Yeah,
So they're going to expect less. It's part of life. So this
even on the same team, Tony, even on the
in the
same
same team, yeah, exactly.
Ronaldo, whatever his name
Yeah,
is.
Ronaldo was paid silly amounts of money, but then
He got
he
him
was so
because he
much
brought
better than
in,
everybody else.
well, not only that,
Messi.
didn't he bring in, then people want to watch him? Then they come
Yes.
to watch him.
Yep. Of course they
Wherever
did.
he went, people went to watch. And,
Exactly. Because
that
Ronaldo
actually
was playing.
get
Yes.
onto a plane and fly to another country. I mean, which is astonishing to me. They'll fly to another country to go and watch this guy play.
Yep.
Well, that's worth something. And then
Yeah, indeed.
when he put on some kind of shirt, when he endorsed something, the sales went through the roof.
Yep.
So people knew that's what he was getting paid for. But some other person said, so if I go out with a new Adidas, well, I don't want to even call them, if I go out with a new shirt that's got something, no one's going to give a rat's ass. Okay. In fact, people are going to look at it and go, oh, do you know what? I don't really like that. That's fat.
Actually bringing the brand down rather than lifting it.
I might be bringing it. Actually, you know what? I should actually write to these companies and go, look, I'm going to start wearing your brand unless you pay me money to not.
Not to wear it.
To not wear it, to not wear it.
I don't want to bring your brand status down. Yes, by me wearing
Exactly.
it.
See, I walk into a school wearing this stuff. That's the end of it. No. Oh, no, we don't want that.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, David Beckham, everyone knows David Beckham.
Yes.
He's long retired now, but everyone knows how successful he was as a football player. And strangely, he played for Real Madrid. He left Manchester United to go to Real Madrid. So he left a big club to go to another big club. But Real Madrid paid a lot of money for him. But apparently, they made back 75% of the fee that they'd paid Manchester United in 6 weeks because of the number of shirts that they sold that had Beckham's name on the back. Wow. So they made a commercial decision there as well as getting a player because they knew that he would attract fans. In other words, they'd get more people watching their game, more people watching on TV, which obviously there's a cost there associated too. And so they recouped the money that they'd spent on buying the player in, which is however many millions, and got the money back in a short period, and then obviously they made more every time they played because he was playing. So it's a commercial decision. But as you rightly say, if that brings in more money, then that person, deserves to be paid more.
Deserves part of it. So there's no questions about it. The other thing that the false victimhood is this idea of we want equality of outcome. We want 50% representation on boards, company boards, of companies, company boards. We want in the boardroom. We want 50% representation there. Okay, when you got 50% representation as miners, as laborers, as oil what's it called, oil platform workers, when we've gone through all the little steps, you will have earned your place in the ivory towers and the air-conditioned offices. But no, they don't want to start off with with all that stuff. And when it comes to, well, when it is snowing or raining hard, can we call upon you to go up to a high tension cable and climb up there where it's cold and dangerous, frankly? Were you prepared to do that? No. Well, okay. So why? Again, victimhood. This thing about I'm a victim only in this circumstance that really suits me, and not in these circumstances. That fries my zucchini, and I'm not.
I've not heard that term before. Okay, I'll remember that one. No, but then, okay, let's go back to the topic. So are people like Rapino and others who are going forward, are they still advocating they're being oppressed?
Oh, definitely. And I don't want to just stick on people, concentrate on people like that. It's how it seeps. It's bad enough as it is, but then how that consciousness seeps into the rest of society. She's actually probably an outcome of this consciousness. She wasn't the first to start it. I'm saying that she probably got there because of other people who before her started this victimhood thing. She and her crowd were quite recent, but when we think back to things that have started in universities, I don't know exactly, because I wasn't paying attention when all this began in universities. I remember laughing about it, but not recognizing how dangerous it was when universities started saying that people needed safe spaces.
Okay. What do they mean by that? What is that?
Well, a safe space is a place where you can go to and no one's allowed to say certain words are not allowed in there, certain attitudes, because people are frightened of, not people, these students are frightened of microaggressions. So a microaggression is saying something that I might find offensive. And that could be anything from not really agreeing about trans people or about pronouns or something like that. Basically, if you disagree with something that I think or believe, that is a microaggression. And in a safe space.
That then means that the person is strangely oppressing everybody else, because if their views are the only ones in town, because if someone was to say something contrary, that they felt attacked in some way, even if it's a microaggression, that means they are stifling the freedoms of anyone else. So they are actually oppressing everybody else.
Well,
think about that.
Well, no, because you're not invited into their space. So you can be outside and doing your thing, but in this place, they do their thing. So
what's their thing? What does that mean?
Well, it's well, okay. So a safe space is a place intended to be free of bias, conflict, criticism, or potentially threatening actions, ideas, or conversations. This is from Wikipedia.
So do they just sit there quietly and not say a word?
No, because if let's say everybody, not everybody. Let's say that there's a bunch of LGBTQ oriented types in your lecture, in your school, right?
Yeah, yeah,
They're in your school.
yeah, yeah.
They would have spaces set aside for them where people who are either of that persuasion or truly comfortable with that persuasion could all go there. So
So
if
if
you
I
went in
went there,
there, you
so if
couldn't.
I went there
Mhm.
to the and I wanted my own space,
Why would you want your own space? I don't get it.
well, I feel oppressed. I've got a bigger toe than anybody else, so I want my space for my toe. I feel
No,
oppressed
yeah, I
if
don't think I was
someone.
going to be going on
No,
about
but
your
do you see
toe.
what I'm
But
saying
if
here?
you went
At
in
what point do
if
we
you went
stop?
in there, if you went in there and you had made it clear that you felt something about your big toe, no one's going to say anything about your toe because it's a safe space.
Right. So the
But
space
but if you
is
came
mean,
into where Tyre and his friends were hanging out and you were stupid enough to mention your big toe, you'd hear nothing about but your big toe.
which is which
because,
is
huh? because
life.
we're just like, well, you brought it up, man. We probably wouldn't have said anything, but my God, that's a
It's a
big
big
one.
toe. Yeah, my big
Yo,
toe. Yes, indeed.
can you
No,
run? All the sort of things. We'll be poking fun until you man up and you go, well, yeah.
so what are we creating here? We're creating
But it
a
started first. That's what I'm saying.
oh,
All this stuff started before. I think her first name is Megan. Something wants to say Megan
Megan Rapinoe is her name.
Rapinoe. Okay, so long before her and her stuff, this had already started, and we didn't notice. We didn't
Okay.
notice that people were saying, oh, I'm a victim. If you say what I don't want to hear,
Yeah.
you're oppressing me. But you're laughing because it is laughable. Just
Because
like, hang on a second.
it's
There's
ridiculous.
insult.
Yeah.
There is insult, which is something we can discuss now, I suppose.
Mm.
There's
Yeah,
insulting,
exactly. What
and
does
then there's like, no, sorry, I don't agree with you.
yeah.
Which is not an insult. So I don't agree with you. But when you say I don't agree with you is now an act of oppression.
Mm.
This is where we get into these ideas of victim, or that to me, I don't know if they started as a grift, but there's certainly a grift now that you can't stand someone to have a different point of view from you. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous. How
Yeah.
does that even is it not even part and parcel of why we are destroying our own democracies?
Mm.
Because if I can't disagree with you, then all parties must say the same thing. All politicians must say the same thing. There is no real choice.
No. I sent you something of obviously our communications outside of the show about a new law
Oh, Scotland.
in Scotland.
I knew about it
Yes.
already. Yes, it was. Well,
Incredible.
you may need to explain it to people. Actually, you was better at explaining things than
Yeah, new law in Scotland, which is quite vague, and that's the scary part. It's almost a form of oppression by the state, really, because now you are having to self-censor, because if you say something out of turn, and that's again, how is that going to be described? Out of turn, that you offend or perhaps
someone feels offended by. If
yeah,
you say
offended by what
something
you've said and they're
that
offended, it's a
offends
hate
someone,
crime.
and by the
It's
way,
a hate crime.
ladies and gentlemen who are listening to this is a law drawn up in Scotland, but it doesn't apply just to people within Scottish borders. It applies to anyone who publishes anything anywhere on the planet that might then offend someone in
In
Scotland.
Scotland, yeah.
So if you're listening to this podcast in America, or we've got a lot of listeners in Hungary.
Yes,
Hello,
for some
Hungary,
reason.
our
Yes,
Hungary.
hello, hello.
Hello, please let us know who you are and how come you have. Why are we big in Hungary? We have no idea, but it's delightful. And by the way, I do want to come and visit Hungary, Budapest actually, and to eat some goulash, which I understand is a fantastic dish. Yeah, so I do intend to come there, and I'll mention it on the show when I'm on my way. Anyway, yeah, if you publish something in Budapest or in
South
wherever,
Africa, wherever you happen to be.
South
Yeah,
Africa,
yeah.
wherever you happen to be. Yes, we do have a couple of viewers listeners in South Africa, and then someone in Scotland takes offense at it. They could report you, and then they would actually pursue a case against you in Scotland. Now, you might not take it seriously, but if one day, I don't know what the statute of limitations is, 6, 7 years from now, you've completely forgotten about it, and you happen to land in the UK for some reason, they could actually nab you and then extradite you to Scotland
Scotland.
to go and answer this ridiculous case.
I know.
It is the most astonishing and astonishingly bad law
Law.
as imaginable, and I think it's going to be challenged very shortly when the Harry Potter author, what's her name?
J.K. Rowling.
J.K. Rowling, when she goes back, because she said she's written on X, she's written and said, "I'm not in the country now, but when I get back to the country, I look forward to being arrested because I'm going to fight this." But if she looks very carefully at what has happened to Julian Assange, allow me to suggest that even with her 1 point something billion in the bank, she might want to think twice because these people are actually potty. Well,
It is
they're
potty. I'm
potty.
sorry, I agree with you. But there was one MP who expressed he did a comparison on social media. Listen to this. He was comparing this rule to some daft comparison of somebody wanting to be identified as non-binary. And he made a comment about that on social media. It wasn't derogatory, it was a comparison. And he wasn't singling out any individual. He was actually more having a go at the ruling itself. So he's having a go at the government as an MP of Scottish Parliament, which is his right to do. And the police got him as a hate crime. And they recorded it. Now, in the end, they did throw it out. However, they still kept a record of it.
Yeah.
Because of one member of the public who took offense at what he said, even though it was nothing to do about non-binary, it was to do about the Scottish government. The police did see sense and they dismissed it. However, they still kept it on record, which is insane. So he's now got that the police have recorded a hate crime against his name, which is absurd. So this is where we're getting to, and we're getting to, with laws such as this, to a totalitarian state, like what 1984, the book was proposing.
I think we have already regressed to 1984. To be honest with you, it's for those of you who want to make some money. What I suggest you do is you go down to your local bookie and you lay a wager on how long it's going to be before Tyre ends up in Scotland behind bars. Because
please don't draw that out, please, because someone will get offended and complain about you.
I'd say it's on the cards, man, because I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and I'm going to wind up in Scottish prison somewhere.
Don't say that, please, because that's just ludicrous. But the thing is, you're attracting it, so don't. So our listeners out there, please don't shock Tayo, even though we have disagreements sometimes. He is my esteemed friend and colleague.
I can record this from prison. Come on.
No, come on. No,
the thing is, on seriously, we can't all be afraid. That's what they depend on. So no. If you want to arrest me and put me in there, as long as everybody else is like, yeah, okay, then if Tyre goes, we go too. The point will come when common sense will come back. And that's what J.K. Rowling probably is doing. She's like, well, we're going to take one for the team. We're going to go in because eventually it's going to be, no, this is really stupid. I mean, I don't know who drafted it, but whoever was drafting it should have looked at it as a legal beagle. Is that what they're called? Someone with a legal brain. Whoever was drafting should have looked at it and go, hang on, this doesn't make this is.
But they voted for it.
This is a terrible. I know. Well,
vote. I mean, I don't understand.
Who drafted it? The person who drafted it should have been like, no, we can't put this in front of Parliament because it's ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. And by the way, when it gets to the Supreme Court, I can't see how it's going to stand. and I don't think we have a very good Supreme Court in the UK, but we still have one.
Mm.
And I don't see this standing in front of the UK. It's very vague. It's just like anybody feels of, that's like,
Yeah, I know.
what
How
does
do you
that
make a
mean?
law about that? It's just too
Anybody, anyway,
vague.
could be
Open for
offended.
really poor interpretation and offense. I mean, oh, come on. It's a minefield. And also, you've got a stretched police force as it is. Now you're adding this on top, which is
But I
just
think they
a
like this sort of thing,
nonsense.
though. Not, don't they? They
They,
like this. I know somebody on this app that brings neighbors together, which I use. This person asked a question and said, the other day I saw 5 police cars speeding down this particular road in Northampton. Does anybody know what was going on?
yeah.
Well, of the 50 answers he got, most of them, including mine, were things like, were they late for a hamburger? Were they, did they hear that somebody had misgendered someone? That was me. Did they hear someone that misgendered someone? And other people made other, and everything was just hilarious. No one took the police seriously. And then someone made a comment that this is actually funny but sad because no one has said anything about, well, there must have been an emergency of some sort. We're all like, no, it probably wasn't an emergency, actually. It was because that's how we think of our police now.
See, that's
That's
not a
not a
good
good way to
state of
look at No,
affairs,
it's
is
not
it?
a good state of affairs at
No,
all.
no.
It's a problem.
Okay. I mean, we're getting not far from close to the hour, but I want to carry on a little bit more. I mean, it's the oppression, going back to our subject matter,
Mm.
the term definition plays a key part because, as you rightly say, people are using it too glibly to say, "Oh, I'm
Well,
being oppressed,"
yeah.
when they're not. And
On
the
one
crux
side,
is,
that's one side of it. The other side of it is that for our youth, for our student, like our, I think everyone, well, most people by now who follow this should know by now. I'm a secondary school tutor. And when we teach students this, when students are taught this, which is passive voice, I want to avoid, but
yeah,
when the system teaches students to think this way, and students start thinking of themselves as victims, one
not
serious
good.
problem that it engenders then is that students don't take responsibility for their own actions. It's not their fault. I'm a
Yeah,
victim. No, it's not. Yes, I did it. I did it, but I did it because XYZ reason. It wasn't me. It wasn't that. Yes, I wanted to hurl a shoe at the window and the window broke. It was, oh, it's my autism. Oh, it's my this. Oh, my parents quarreled this morning.
right.
It's always sorry?
Some fundamental thing here, right? Listen to this. Unless there's someone who has got a gun actually pointing at your head,
Hmm.
telling you to do a particular act in a certain way,
Hmm.
unless that scenario is present, you as an individual have personal responsibility. You're moving your arms, you're moving your feet, you're moving your mouth. These are all controlled by you. And trying to blame others or circumstances
Hmm.
is not it, because you ultimately can choose. And that's all it is. It's a choice. Now, if you've chosen incorrectly, man up, own up. I've chose wrong.
Hmm.
Don't then, as you say, play the victim card and blame other things, because you could have two people in exact same scenario and one chooses to act one way and one chooses to act another way.
Hmm.
So the scenario, that it's the same for both, but the actions and outcomes are different because different people are choosing a different approach. So the action lies with the individual, personal responsibility. So they can't play the victim card. They can't. Society seems to be pushing people down that path. Oh, it's okay. It's all right. You've done that. You're a victim. No, you've made an incorrect choice. So we need to fix that choice. Take responsibility for it. And don't be afraid of making the mistake, but own up to the mistake and then do something to correct it. Not the fact of, well, that's nothing to do with me. I'm
You
a
know,
victim.
I've said I'm going to invite you into a school because yes, you do have a DBS. I think I want to invite you to a school because you don't know what's going on, Tony. You said what you just said. If you say what you've just said now in a school, and if you were a teacher, you like me, I'm a supply teacher, so I'm not permanent staff. If as a supply teacher I said what you've just said, I probably would not be brought back into that school again. Because they'd say that what I'm doing there is a form of oppression against the children. It's actually they use the word safeguarding, that I'm a safeguarding danger to the children, if that's what I truly believe.
You're
Because they
safeguarding danger. You see, I'm actually
yeah.
going into schools at the moment, but to talk in a positive way. I'm actually doing that now because I'm promoting my Boris the Brick book to the
Mm-hmm.
kids. And
Mm.
in
But you
turn,
can't say what you just said
no,
to
no. But what I
because if
am
you did,
encouraging, what I
mm.
am encouraging them to do is to use their inner talent and write, if they can, to make up stories. Because one day, who
That's fair. No
knows?
one's going to be
Exactly.
upset about
No,
that. But if you
no,
started
indeed.
saying, that you
Don't be a
have,
victim. No, no, I'm not going to
don't be a
say that. That's
victim,
not part
yeah,
of my remit, unfortunately.
because that's what people will say. That no, this you don't know what happened to this poor lad. You have no idea. This and that happened, and I'm like, look, guy, what happened to him is a trifling thing that happens to children in Nigeria every single day, and
Yeah,
they don't behave like that. So,
indeed.
and then the doctors, what, they're getting on the act, and they sign prescriptions, and then the medical people sign, get this. It's a massive, massive grift. It's like, thank goodness now the government has stepped in. I don't know how that happened, but we can no longer assign puberty blockers
Yes.
to
You
children
see,
in the UK.
this is now,
It's
think
creeping
about this
back.
for a minute.
It's
This
creeping
is,
back, isn't it?
yeah, it's swinging back. But
Mm.
then people could say, we could then use the argument again, does the government, this is probably another topic for another time, but does the government know better? The fact that they've had to step in because they've left it to us, they've left the decision making to us, and clearly there's some people within the community that have pushed an agenda that's not really very good. So the government have had to step in and go, right, guys, sorry, you're making a mess here. We've got to stop this. So
No, I
there's
think what happened.
justification for government coming in and saying, well, they know better for our well-being than perhaps we do. It's
No,
their
I think
justification.
what happened is despite all the censorship on the big tech platforms, despite all that, there's a groundswell of opinion where people are really getting truly fed up. And these people who are getting truly fed up, they're all talking about voting for new parties. And by the
Yeah,
way,
the
I no
reform.
longer, yeah, well, not even, I don't even think I want to vote for a reform party any longer. I wanted to. I think I'm now intending to either vote for an independent candidate or stand as an independent candidate myself. One of the two. I think we should all vote for independent candidates. We should stay away from
The political
from
parties,
political
yeah.
parties. If there's one party is really a person I'm thinking of, is George Galloway. He's been saying the same thing for 50 years. He's never changed his tune. You've always known where he's coming from. He's a stand-up guy as far as I'm concerned. But and that's his new Labour Party. But what's it called again?
I don't know.
Workers' Party, the Workers'
Workers'
Party.
Party.
But I'm not really a
Sounds a bit
Labour. I'm not really a
communist in
Labour.
terms,
Well,
but
he's
okay.
very left wing,
Yeah, he
but
is
he's
left.
never ever changed his
No, he's always
mind.
been
He's
that view.
always
Yeah.
been, so I can respect that. However, I'm really thinking that I'm either if there is no candidate, I'm going to find it. I'm not going to campaign or anything, but I just want people to have a choice, and I'll put myself forward. I mean, once they've actually gone over my social media, they'll be like, bringing back the guillotine and things like that. But I'll go out there and I'll tell them why. And then you know what? When I get going, I can actually give quite a good speech. And I don't know, maybe I'll just get going and get wind behind in my sails and everything. And then the men in the black suits will have to come and kill me because that's
Stop it.
a lot of people are look at what happened to the poor Boeing guy.
Yes, indeed. That was in our previous show.
Yeah, you have to
He
take it
spoke
seriously.
out against Boeing and his demise happened and he predicted it as well. which was really scary. So those of you out there listening to this now thinking, what are they talking about? Please go onto your favorite search engine and search for our show, the TNT Talk Show, and you can find our back episodes of which we discuss that very topic. But Teo, I'm very mindful of we're getting close to the top of the hour here.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to our topic in hand in here, do oppressed people automatically deserve our protection?
Not only do they not automatically deserve our protection, it is also very dangerous and injurious to our society if we grant it.
I'm more of the opinion that oppression is a more narrow field than we are led to believe. Too many people use the term being oppressed when in reality they're not. There are only a small category of individuals that will move into the oppressed state. So imagine a column. This is the oppression column. It's not very wide. It's a narrow column. Most people are outside of the oppression column. Some are in it. Granted, if they are, then their rights are being curtailed in some way. They're not free to act or do what they want. Then they could be oppressed because then they can't do anything about it. However, the majority of people who say they're oppressed are not in this band. They are outside it. So truly, they are not oppressed. They might be, unable to do something a short period, but oppression isn't the word they're facing at that time. Okay. Unfortunately, we have reached the end of the show for another week.